Here's something that I never, ever do, which is to just record myself speaking without someone to engage me in a conversation. When people attend our clinics, the very first stop in their journey is a resting metabolic assessment. And essentially what this is we take a look at how many calories the body requires if it were to do nothing in a 24-hour period. And then we start factoring in the expenditure that comes from just getting around your day, your exercise, so on and so forth. We add all that up and we try to get a sense of how many calories your body needs to perform. And we also factor in the VO2 max information, which gives a much clearer look at what the caloric expenditure is when you're out doing the things that you do. So getting a sense of how much energy your body requires is a very, very critical piece of information. So what I have in my hand here are a couple of reports from the resting metabolic assessment. I also have the VO2 max test over a couple visits. And so I'm going to go back to, this is January of this year. This is the resting metabolic assessment. I'm not going to give you the name, but I'm going to give you the details about this client. She's a female, she's 34 years old, and in January, she was 150 pounds and she was about 5'6", I believe. And so we did the test, and the test came back and suggested that her resting energy expenditure, that means the calories your body requires, excluding other things like your activity levels, your exercise and such, it came out to 1,627 calories. And all said and done, and the factor here that it uses for caloric expense for exercise is really pretty shallow. It's only showing like 328 calories, which means that you started to go out and exercise, you decided to go home instead. But anyway, the total number comes up to about 2443, and the lifestyle and activity number that it throws in here is 488, and that's static. So the next test I'm going to share with you is the same. And what's interesting about all this is it's showing that her caloric demand from her carbohydrate stores was 64.2%. And mind you, that's not terrible. That's not bad at all. But her fat utilization at rest was 35.8%. Again, it's not terrible, but it could use some improvement. So once we have this information, Lori, who's been my wife, been working with me for years and years and years doing this work, advises people on how they should approach their feeding, timing, substrates, to the whole thing. What should you actually stick in your system, right? And so here we go, we come back. This is a few days ago, this is October 15th this year. And mind you, the woman was 150 pounds, she is now 130 pounds. And we're looking at her caloric expense. Total tail of the tape here came out to 2,181 calories. Now, she doesn't need as many calories because she doesn't have as much weight to support. But what's really interesting about all of this is that her carbohydrate utilization is 47%, to be clear, 47.2, but her fat utilization is 52.8%. It's gone up about 20%. That's a big deal. So what that is suggesting is that while she sleeps, she's actually sparing about 20% of her carbohydrate stores because her body's utilizing fat. And what ends up happening is that because she's pulling from that fat store on a regular basis every evening that she sleeps, and more so while she's training, she gets leaner. So she's not sacrificing lean tissue, she's not losing muscle, but she is definitely dropping body fat. And I've seen her just a few days ago, and she looked amazing. Much, much lighter, but very powerful. I mean, she didn't sacrifice any strength. As a matter of fact, following up with a VO2 test, I have both of those here too, excuse me, I have to get my old man glasses again, was 33.7, which is not great by any stretch. For a 35 or a 34-year-old woman at the time, that's not a great score. Her threshold was about 121 beats per minute, which is pretty low. Now, I have to suggest that her heart rates across the board were typically pretty low throughout the course of this test. But coming back, and just a few days ago, now her VO2 score is 48.9. She went from 33.7 to 48.9. It's a significant bump in her VO2 score. And her threshold is also up by, 20 beats, almost. Well, no, but 15 beats per minute. So this is suggesting that her ability to produce work is significantly greater than it was before, and her body composition is far better than it was before. And in essence, what she's doing is she's dramatically improving. I expect it's going to get better over the course of the next season when she's racing. She's showing up on a podium now. Never did that before. And you know, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to get across here is that these tests set the stage for having a much better understanding of how you might approach your caloric intake, where that energy is going to come from, and how efficiently your body's using that fuel. And then through the heart rate specific training we provide, we're able to dial in the training so that the fitness across the board is greater, endurance across the board is greater. We've just taken the guesswork out of everything. And incidentally, which I didn't share with you here, is that we were recommending that she takes on 3,500 calories a day. So appreciate this is a 130-pound female. She's taking on 3,500 calories a day. And that's been the case since last time we saw her. So she's dropped body fat, she's maintained lean mass, and she's not starving. So a lot of people think don't eat, you know, stay lean, cut the calories, maybe cut the carbs, maybe try this fat adapted nonsense, maybe try some intermittent fasting, what have you. And all this foolishness does is get you into trouble. We find, and having done this for so many years, just being relatively conservative about your eating habits, being relatively conservative to make sure that all the substrates that need to be there are there, the carbs, the fat, the protein, over the course of each meal, over the course of each day. When it's all said and done, your body's much happier, your stress levels are lower, you sleep like a baby, and you perform like a champion.